Broken Entertainment. So today I'm going to talk about my fantasy project Shadow Empire. Even though I have writing videos typically done on Sunday, I just kind of want to talk about this today instead of anything that's really in the news. And I'll probably, if I have time, hopefully have another Sunday writing video later on in the weekend. But today, my main focus is going to be on the main character of Shadow Empire. Now, there's a cast of characters, there's different perspective, different points of view throughout the book, and I'm really still in the early stages of Draft Zero. Like I said in the previous video, I'm probably about 20% through that, maybe 15, and still working on moving stuff over from my previous system over to Campfire Blaze. So we're going to talk about the Inheritor Elect, Zvarin, but I'm not going to have everything over here yet. So some of it's just blank. You can see I don't have an image. I don't have his physical attributes or his personality traits worked in yet. I do have all that. It's just not here because I need to take time to actually sit down and move it all over, and that takes a while. So the book starts out in the Cyrule Commonwealth, which is the core remnants of what was once a continent-spanning empire named the Alarian Empire, and that was brought down by the Arcanicalism thousands of years ago that nearly wiped out the not just the economy, but the entire way of life of the empire. It also destroyed large chunks of ecology, decimated the weather patterns. Everything natural about the continent was shaken up, twisted, distorted, or completely broken down. So the empire fell apart. And you have core groups of city-states that come out of that. And eventually they come together. They form the Cyrule Commonwealth based around Cyrule Castle or Cyrule Citadel, which is a remnant left over from the Alarian Empire. It was a major fortification and center of defense built through magic. Magic is, at this point that the book takes place, no longer legal. After the Arcanicalism, it is completely outlawed. Everybody they find practicing magic is either killed or sent to the southern wastes, which we'll get into another time. And what you have resulting from that is the Cyrule Commonwealth, which is a feudal system, but it is an electoral feudal system, so that the king, not everybody else, but the king is selected through an election, and not through a direct election, but the nobility is divided up into different ranks, and the top ranks are the elector lords. And these are the people that control largest amounts of territories. They're essentially like dukes. They vote not for the king, but for the position called the Inheritor Elect, which is the heir to the king. In this way, the kingship does not tend to stick with one family. It moves. Because usually the inheritor elect is not from the same family as the king. It's done to keep one family from gaining too much power over the others, essentially. That has changed at the advent of the book, so that you have one king who has cajoled and bribed and blackmailed the elector lords into electing his son as inheritor elect. His son is Zvarin, and he is the main character. He's the point of view that we start with. He is, ironically, because this book's theme is really about extremism and what that does to society. And there's extremism throughout the book from different cultures, different perspectives, and in different directions. So the Cyrule Commonwealth is a highly patriarchal system. It has men are allowed to have up to 6 wives. Each wife has a different role. And the women aren't treated very well at all. They have very few rights. Svarin is different. He has been raised by his mentor wife, who is the only woman he's married to when the book starts. And she was able to gather illegal texts about the Alarian Empire, because most of those are banned. And she showed him the history of the world, essentially. And he was able, through that, to realize there was a different way. And the Alarian Empire had been not egalitarian, but far more equal than the Cyril Commonwealth. So he has different ideas about how the world should work and how the Cyril Commonwealth should work and how men and women should behave towards one another than his father. So you get immediate tension from that. He is well educated. He has a lot of ability when it comes to leadership, but he's not very experienced. And that comes into play repeatedly throughout the book. He doesn't know how to fight very well. You know, he's been raised to take over the kingdom, but his father was of the belief that he had done all the fighting necessary, and once his son took over, it would just be about governing. So he hasn't trained him to fight, and that's gonna be a problem. And through the course of the book, he's going to travel. He's going to travel to the south of the country, where elector lords are less securely in the camp of his father. He's going to travel east. He's going to travel north to the Apocalypse Spires, to where the tribal Hydroxy are, because as it turns out, there's a serious threat, and I'll get into that when I do the actual video on the book's subject, and it's what it's primarily about. He's going to meet a lot of different people. He's going to be exposed to a lot of different things. And his challenge is going to be, how do I get all of these different people who are diametrically opposed to actually cooperate on any level? And I drew that from the fact that you turn on the TV, you turn on movies, you look at comics, you look at Twitter, you look at the news, and all you seem to see anymore is just discord and extremism of, oh, these people are horrible, no, you're horrible, no, this is horrible, no, these people are, you know what I'm talking about. And that was kind of the driving force behind this book, and it's not going to analyze our reality, but it is going to analyze how a world is affected by that level of discord, and it's even worse there than it is in the real world. I don't want to get too far into that without revealing a whole lot of stuff. So, just to kind of show you, he's only 22 when this starts. He is, sorry, Twitter, he's a heterosexual male. And you can see, I'm going to show some of the features of Campfire Blaze here. I'm not sponsored by them, but all my stuff's here, so you're going to see it as we talk about this. He's the Inheritor Elect is his official title. He's 22 years old. This is a placeholder. He is human. He worships the Alarian Pantheon. Has his athletic build. I've not filled these in yet. His educational interest is primarily history. He is a reformer. And his father is very, very conservative in the other direction. So they butt heads from the beginning of the book. He's a challenger. He's not very proactive in the beginning. He's not exceptionally competent in the beginning. He is very passionate about his beliefs. He's not exceptionally aggressive in the beginning. And this is kind of where I want to start a character like this. Not all the characters are like this, but I'm tired of the hyper competent fantasy protagonists, right? They're immediately good at things and they don't have to develop skills as much. They're already very good at what they do. This is someone that hasn't yet grown into what they do. He hasn't inherited the kingdom. He hasn't really been given a chance to put any of his knowledge and training into actual practice. And then he has serious weaknesses in his combat ability, in his understanding of warfare in general to start with. And he's very driven, but he also is a little idealistic in how things work. And in early on, his very strong relationship with his mentor wife is going to... She kind of tries to temper his momentum, so to speak, of like, okay, I realize that you want to change things, but you gotta pick your battles. Because he kind of wants, like, okay, let's get rid of the multiple wives thing. And she's like, you maybe can't start there. But he's gonna move to be his own complete independent person, of course, over the course of the story. He's not disobedient initially. Very honest, very tolerant. He's very organized. He's sincere. He has a lot of self-control. He's very faithful, especially to his mentor wife. His father keeps pushing him. You gotta get more wives. You don't have an heir. You don't have any children. Your mentor wife is probably too old at this point. You gotta get more wives. And he's like, but I don't want to. And is very much out of love for her. Because while the Cyril Commonwealth is a patriarchal system, I'm not assaulting these things in the book. They're patriarchal. Their enemy, the Hydroxy tribes, are matriarchal. I'm just exploring different concepts, and each culture is intentionally diametrically opposed to his neighbor in some way. To kind of analyze this, okay, what if everybody didn't get along fundamentally? And how do you handle that? So, I really like him as a character, obviously. I mean, he's my main character. But what I've done intentionally, first of all, he's got to develop into his skill. Second of all, he has to learn new skills. And third of all, he's not experienced to begin with. He's also not capable of casting spells. He's not even aware magic is still a thing. He knows it was a thing. He doesn't actually believe anybody still casts spells anywhere or exists that knows how to do it. And the reason I've chosen to do that with him, not with all the characters, there are going to be major characters who use magic. But the reason I've done that with him is because he is the central character, and every time I turn around in fantasy, it's like the central character is a magic user. And that's great, but I don't want to be every fantasy. Okay? So, he's not the farm boy. He's not the expert swordsman. He's not the spellcaster. But he's also not totally incompetent. He's not the random town person either. He is trained to run a kingdom. He's trained to organize and to lead. He's just not been able to put any of that into practice. And I really want to have this character develop as the story goes, and learn their skills, he will become very competent in certain things. But I just didn't want to do the typical fantasy protagonist. He's not the chosen one. He's not a farmer. He's not some Joe Schmo that lives in the middle of nowhere. He is very important politically. He just isn't very experienced in real world affairs yet. You know, he's spent his life in castles, being raised very, very wealthy. So it's kind of applying that sort of ivory tower to the real world and seeing how that clashes, and also showing him clash with his surroundings, with people who are fundamentally opposed to one another. And in a way, he is himself an extremist, because not only does he want to change his society, but he wants people to not be blinded by ideology or by their hatred of one another. And that in itself, in a world of extremists, in a world of diametrically opposed cultures and peoples, that's an extreme position. So I've made it very difficult for him to get along with anyone, not out of his own, he's not a jerk or anything, but his world is difficult. His world is full of people, even within his own kingdom, that don't really get along. And that's based very much on what I see in the world now. When not, going outside, but turning on the TV, watching a movie, what have you, we're constantly pushed this stuff. And I wanted to use some analogies and look at how a world could end up if it keeps going that route. And, ask the question is, can people come together who don't like each other? Can, to use real world examples, can an SJW and somebody from Comicsgate come together and just talk? It doesn't seem that way, does it? But we'll see in the book. So hopefully you find this interesting. I've never really done this kind of video before. I'll try to go into a little more depth on some of the other characters once they're all fully transferred over here, and you will see quickly that there is definitely a cast of characters. He's the central character, but there are characters that he's going to have to deal with, either as enemies or potential allies, and they're not going to start out liking him. The only person who starts out liking him are the people who are from his kingdom, who either see him as politically powerful or understand him for who he is. The first character that we'll probably discuss after him is Alay, and she is the servant of his mentor wife. She's also a spellcaster, secretly. And she is competent in what she does. Not that I'm not saying he's incompetent, but she's worldly experienced. She's put training to practice. And she is someone who is immediately one of his strong allies. Not just because of his relationship with her mistress, so to speak, but also because she sees in him somebody that isn't just out to game the system, or somebody who treats women with respect and dignity, somebody who treats family with respect and dignity. And she's drawn to that, where she's like, this is somebody, maybe things can be better if some people are like this. So let me know if you're interested in more videos like this in the comments. If you'd like to know anything specific, that would be great. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.